ducks. How are you? How's everybody this morning? It is a chilly morning. It is like -8 degrees right now. Whew. I don't know. Poor little ducks. You're gonna have to stay inside again today, guys. What you gonna do? There's a duck laying. See her? Well, it looks like I only have 4 eggs for this morning. None of them are frozen or cracked. They're all fresh. So I'll probably have to come back out here in about a half hour or so and see who else has laid some eggs. Yeah, this is a little bit lower than what we usually get. Especially after that record-breaking 17 count that we had the other day. So yesterday I put on a tie, got in the truck, and drove down to Montpelier, which is our state's capital. And that's where the barn grant folks their office is. So I went into their office and I sat down with them. And I, in the nicest way possible, said, hey look, I'm really bummed that I didn't get the barn grant. And I really want to try to understand what I did in my application that worked, what didn't work, how close was I, and what could I do differently from next year? And I gotta say, the barn grant folks were super nice and super helpful. They sat me down, they took me through all the scoring rubrics and showing me basically every barn grant application. They showed me kind of where the cutoff point was, where they stopped giving out grants because they didn't have any more funding to give out. They were really helpful and really transparent, and I was actually kind of blown away by it all. When I looked at all the projects they had, and they had a ton of them, we were easily in like the top third of the projects, maybe in the top quartile. I didn't exactly count, but we were really up there. And when I look at the cutoff for the barns that got funding versus the barns that didn't, we were only 2 points away from actually receiving funding, or at least being in that category. So the first point I want to make is it was really, really close. That was what ultimately determined our status as an alternate. The second piece that was really helpful was they showed me some things in my barn grant that I sort of maybe left unclear, or I created unnecessary questions with. Not that they were problems themselves, but they had people kind of going back and forth wondering a couple of things. And so if I could do that differently next year, it would help a lot. And as far as my odds go for fixing up the barn this year and changing the roof this year, I would say though they look a little bit slim. There were a lot of worthy projects, and it's a somewhat tentative process in terms of how the alternate funding gets doled out. Like, I wouldn't find out about that until really late in the year, which would be too late to probably do much work on the barn. And given that I have some roof problems, I know I need to act on my plan B probably faster than that information will come in. So that leaves me with trying to figure out what to do with our barn this year. And so here's my game plan. Step 1, as I was relaying the news of my non-approval status to the contractor who was going to replace the roof on our barn, he said to me that he had some ideas on how to potentially patch the roof, at least temporarily. It won't fix the structural problems that we have and some of the longer term issues that we have with the roof peak, but at the same time, patching it up will, for at least a couple of years, prevent some of the leaks and water damage that I'm currently very concerned about. And so essentially what that will do is, for not a lot of money, we'll kind of hold things in place for a little while. So that's gonna be step 1. Step 2 is gonna be, I'm gonna start on my own, maybe with the help of some friends, maybe if some of you guys out there wanna help with some barn repair, start clearing out the barn, start patching up some of the holes, start pulling out the wreckage that we have. And when I say cleaning up the wreckage, I mean cleaning up this whole situation over here. And ultimately, try to get this place into a little bit better shape. I'm also gonna start cutting down and harvesting some of the trees that we have in our forest and setting them aside. The reason I'm gonna set them aside is I'm ultimately going to use them as lumber for the barn and repairing the barn. By doing that, it's gonna cut down on a number of my costs in the future, and so that could be a potentially big help. And then step 3 is I'm changing my barn plan a little bit. So I know that I've talked about in the past wanting to be able to store modern equipment in here, wanting to be able to use this place a little bit more like it's a garage. Because of a lot of the drainage issues and how big of a foundation would be required to be poured, trying to turn this area down here into a garage would be a pretty costly endeavor. And so instead of trying to really modernize this barn, my plan's gonna be to actually try to just sort of freeze it in time and then maybe use it for storage, use it for animals, maybe use it for a couple of other things like that. But I know that I need to have some sort of more modern facility here on the farm. And so what I'm seriously contemplating doing is taking some of the money that I was gonna use for the longer term barn upgrades and actually use that money to convert the little shed shack. Allison likes to call it her flower shack. And what we would do is potentially convert and retrofit that structure into the workshop and barn that we've been planning for a while. That is a bit of a change of plan, but I think it might actually be more practical. I also know that a number of you have been asking me about doing some sort of GoFundMe or Kickstarter or setting up a Patreon of some sort or doing something like that. And I've come up with an idea of how I want to tackle it. So I really do want to create an avenue for anybody out there who's watching these videos who wants to help us in the restoration and saving of this barn. And so what I'm going to do is it's really going to be 3 things. Number 1, I'm gonna set up a PayPal account that if anybody wants to just directly donate to the improvements on the barn, you can. I know a lot of you have said that things like GoFundMe charge a vig, and so you have to pay a percentage to them, and you don't want to do that. So if you want to just make a direct contribution, I'm gonna set that up and leave it down below. Second, for those of you guys who are out there and who really just enjoy the content and want to help us and support the farm overall, I'm gonna be establishing a Patreon account. If you want to support us in our farm, you want to help support the barn, any of those things you can contribute through Patreon as well. And then third, for those of you who don't want to just give money away, I'm setting up some merchandise. So the other day when I put out that town meeting day video, some of you remarked on the awesome canvas bag that my friend Dart was showing off. I'm going to try to make a recreation of that, but actually do it as a Gold Shaw farm bag. I'm also going to make some cool t-shirts and mugs and other stuff, and you can check that out as well. So if you want links for the PayPal, the Patreon, or the Teespring store, I'm gonna leave those right there in the description of this video. Be sure to check them out. But also, please don't feel any pressure to contribute. I really do feel a little bit weird putting this stuff out there. We as people are kind of very lucky to begin with. And through the money that I make through my job, I'm able to support a lot of our activities, endeavors here on the farm. And so, I don't really want to make this a huge contribution ask because so many of you guys were looking for some sort of way to contribute and help out. I figured this was the most balanced way to approach it. Okay, commercial over. Hey look, I just found 3 more eggs. So a funny thing happened when I went to the barn grant folks' office yesterday. I was sitting down talking to one of the women from the state, and I mentioned to her that I had made another video about the barn grant and the news of the fact that I didn't get it. And she said, "Oh, I saw that video." And I kind of laughed and chuckled and I said, "What did you think?" And she looked so embarrassed and she said, "Oh man, I was watching the end of the video and when you got the letter and you were about to open it, I was just saying, oh please God, don't let him open that letter. He's not gonna do that on camera, is he?" And then she laughed and said it was kind of funny. Because she was like one of the few people who was watching that video who actually knew the outcome. I do want to say thank you to both Caitlin and Laura over at the state for sitting down with me and talking it all through. Having that conversation really did make me feel a little bit better about our barn and our farm plans. And it gave me some hope and made me really feel like I just need to keep trying and keep working at it. Even though it's like negative whatever degrees right now, I feel like it's gonna be very soon that this stuff's gonna be all melting.
The Vermont savannas support millions of grazers. They also support ruthless predators. The barn cat can eat more than twice its own weight in small rodents in a given day. And sometimes it also eats sticks.